My ex-wife demands I give the money I saved for our late son to her stepson. Hey Reddit. I'm writing this because I genuinely don't know how to handle what just happened. My emotions are all over the place, and I feel like I'm losing my grip on what's fair and what's just plain insane. I guess I'll just dive in. I'm 48, and until recently I was a dad. My son, Ryan, was my world. He was 18 when he died, and not a day goes by where I don't miss him. Ryan was the kind of kid that made you feel lucky just to know him. Smart, driven, compassionate. Honestly, sometimes I wondered how he turned out so great when his parents, me and my ex-wife, were such a train wreck. Ryan had this infectious energy about him. He loved to debate, loved learning, and had this laugh that could fill a room. When he got accepted into Yale last year, it was like the culmination of everything he worked for. I'll never forget the way his eyes lit up when he got the letter. It was the proudest moment of my life. But life has a way of pulling the rug out from under you. A few months after his acceptance, Ryan was killed by a drunk driver while walking home from his best friend's house. It happened in November, just a few weeks before Thanksgiving. The police said he died on impact. I hope they're right because the thought of him suffering is unbearable. Since then, my life has been a blur. The house is too quiet now. His room is exactly the way he left it, and I can't bring myself to touch anything. Some nights I just sit in there, staring at his bookshelf, his desk, his posters, trying to remember what it felt like to hear him laugh, to see him smile. Before I get into what's happening now, I need to give you some backstory. My ex-wife Kelly and I divorced when Ryan was 12. She was the one who initiated it. She said she needed to find herself and reclaim her identity. I was blindsided, but looking back, the writing was on the wall. We hadn't been happy for a while, and I guess she decided she wanted a fresh start. I fought hard for custody of Ryan, and I got it. Kelly didn't put up much of a fight. She said she needed to focus on herself and that it would be better for Ryan if he stayed with me full time. She moved across town and got remarried 2 years later to a guy named Jerry, who already had a teenage son of his own. After she remarried, Kelly's visits became less and less frequent. She'd show up for the big holidays, Christmas, Easter, sometimes his birthday, but the rest of the time it was radio silence. Ryan tried to keep the relationship alive for a while. He'd call her, text her, ask if she wanted to come to his soccer games or his school events. But she always had some excuse. I'm busy with work, Jerry and I already have plans, maybe next time. Eventually, Ryan stopped trying. I think it broke his heart, but he never showed it. Instead, he poured all his energy into school. He was determined to make something of himself, to prove he didn't need anyone but himself. From the moment Ryan was born, I started a 5-5-29 college savings plan for him. Every extra dollar I had went into that account. I skipped vacations, worked overtime, drove the same crappy car for years. Everything to make sure he'd have a future. When Ryan got into Yale, the fund was ready. It was enough to cover his tuition, housing, books. Everything. For the first time, I felt like all the sacrifices I'd made were worth it. And then he was gone. After the funeral, I couldn't bring myself to touch the fund. I know it sounds irrational, but it feels like the last piece of Ryan I have left. That money wasn't just money. It was a promise I made to him, a symbol of everything he worked for. I don't know what I'll do with it yet. Maybe I'll donate it to a scholarship fund in his name. Maybe I'll just leave it there forever. I haven't decided. Last week she came over unannounced. At first, I thought she was there to grieve, to share memories of Ryan, maybe even offer some kind of comfort. But no, she was there to talk about the college fund. She sat down at my kitchen table, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "I know you have the 529 account for Ryan. Since he's gone, I think you should give it to Jerry's son." I thought I misheard her. I asked her to repeat herself, and she did. "It's only fair," she said. "Jerry and I think it's the right thing to do. His son deserves a chance, and Ryan would have wanted that." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This woman, who barely visited her own son, who missed most of his life, was now asking me to give the money I saved for him to her stepson? I told her no. I said that money was for Ryan, and Ryan only. She got defensive, said I was being selfish and bitter. Then she dropped the real kicker. "It's not like you need it anymore." I told her to get out of my house before I said something I'd regret. She left, but not before warning me that this wasn't over. Since then, she's been rallying her side of the family against me. I've been getting texts and calls non-stop from her parents, her siblings, even some mutual friends. They're all saying the same thing. Family helps family. You're being heartless. Jerry's son deserves a future too. One of them even had the nerve to say that keeping the money was hoarding it out of spite. The thing is, I'm not planning to use the money. Right now I can't even think about touching it. It feels like betraying Ryan, but the thought of giving it to Kelly and her stepson makes my blood boil. That money wasn't just for college, it was for Ryan's dream, his hard work, his future. I don't know what to do. Am I being irrational? Am I holding on to the fun because I can't let go of Ryan? Or am I justified in keeping it as a way to honor his memory? Update. I didn't expect the response to my original post to be so overwhelming. I've spent the last few days reading through the comments, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who shared their thoughts, advice, and kind words. Honestly, some of the things you all said hit me hard, but in a good way. And it made me realize that I'm not alone in this, even if it feels that way sometimes. I wish I could say that things have calmed down, but they haven't. In fact, they've escalated in a way I never saw coming. Let me explain. A few days after my post, I got a text from Kelly. She said, "We need to talk. This is getting ridiculous." I told her there was nothing to talk about, but she insisted. She said her family wanted to mediate the situation and that it would be better for everyone if we hashed things out in person. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I showed up at her house the next evening, and the minute I walked in, I knew I'd made a mistake. It wasn't just Kelly and Jerry waiting for me. It was her whole damn family, her parents, her brother, her sister-in-law, even Jerry's son, who looked uncomfortable as hell sitting there like a prop. They sat me down and immediately started in on me. Her mom said I was being cruel and vindictive. Her brother said I needed to put my bitterness aside for the good of the family. Jerry chimed in with, "We're not asking you to give it all to my son, just enough to get him started. He's a good kid, and he deserves a shot." It felt like an ambush. I tried to explain, again, that the money wasn't about me or them or Jerry's son. It was about Ryan. It was the last thing I had left of him, and I wasn't ready to let it go. But they didn't care. They kept pushing, kept guilt-tripping me. Kelly finally said, "Ryan's gone, and nothing's going to bring him back. Holding on to that money isn't going to change anything. You're being selfish, and you know it." I snapped. I stood up and said, "Selfish? You're the one who barely even visited your own son when he was alive. You want to talk about selfish? Look in the mirror." The room went dead silent. Kelly's face turned red, and her dad stood up telling me I needed to leave. I didn't argue. I walked out, slamming the door behind me. I thought that would be the end of it, but no. 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail from a lawyer. Kelly is now formally demanding that I turn over the college fund to her and Jerry's son. She claims that since the money was earmarked for education, it should be reallocated to someone who can use it. The letter also accuses me of hoarding assets and being unreasonable. It's not an actual lawsuit, not yet, but it's clear they're trying to intimidate me into giving up. I called my own lawyer immediately. He told me they don't have a leg to stand on. The 529 plan is in my name, and I'm the one who decides what happens to it. But still, the fact that they went this far is blowing my mind. I can't believe the woman I once loved, the mother of my child, has turned into someone I don't even recognize. Here's where things take an even weirder turn. After I posted the original story, a family friend reached out to me privately. Let's call her Lisa. She said she saw my post and wanted me to know something about Jerry's son, something that might explain why Kelly is pushing so hard for the money. Apparently, Jerry's son has been getting into trouble, big trouble. He's flunking classes, skipping school, and has even been caught shoplifting. Lisa said there's been talk about him getting kicked out of his current school, and that Kelly and Jerry are desperate to straighten him out before things get worse. I don't know how true all of this is, but if it is, it explains a lot. They're not asking for the money because they think it's the right thing to do. They're asking for it because they see it as a way to fix their problems. At this point, I'm exhausted. I'm grieving my son, dealing with constant harassment from Kelly's family and now facing legal threats. Part of me wants to fight back just to prove a point, but another part of me wonders if it's even worth the stress. I've been thinking a lot about what to do with the college fund. A lot of you suggested creating a scholarship in Ryan's name, and I think that's a beautiful idea. Maybe I could set something up for students in our area, kids who remind me of Ryan and share his drive and passion. But one thing I know for sure is that Kelly and Jerry's son will not be getting a single cent. I won't dishonor Ryan's memory like that. I'll keep you all updated if anything else happens. But for now, I just need some time to think. Thanks again for all your support. It means more than you know. Final update. I'm back with what I think will be the final update to this situation. I can't even begin to describe how overwhelming this entire ordeal has been, but I promised I'd let you all know how things turned out. A lot has happened since my last post, so buckle up. This one's going to be long. After I received that letter from Kelly's lawyer, I decided to go on the offensive. My lawyer advised me to respond formally, stating in no uncertain terms that the 529 fund is mine to control and that any further attempts to claim it could be considered harassment. I thought that would be the end of it, but of course it wasn't. A few days later, Kelly showed up at my house unannounced. She was visibly angry, practically shaking as she stood on my doorstep. She started shouting, saying that I was destroying her family and that Jerry was furious with her because I wasn't playing ball. I told her to leave, but she refused. She said, "If you don't do the right thing, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." I didn't even respond. I just shut the door in her face. It was the most surreal moment of my life. Watching the mother of my child stand on my porch threatening me over money that had nothing to do with her. Later that week, I got a call from Lisa, the family friend who told me about Jerry's son. She said she had more information and thought I should know. According to her, Jerry's son had recently been caught with drugs at school. It wasn't his first offense either. Apparently, he's been spiraling for a while, and Kelly and Jerry have been trying to cover it up to avoid any fallout. Hearing that made everything click into place. The push for the college fund wasn't just about paying for school, it was about damage control. They wanted to use the money to send Jerry's son to some expensive private institution or rehab facility and save face in the process. At this point, I felt nothing but anger. I had been grieving Ryan every single day, and instead of supporting me or even acknowledging my pain, Kelly was trying to manipulate me into fixing someone else's mess. I decided it was time to stop playing defense. I asked Lisa if she could provide proof of what she was telling me. She hesitated at first, but eventually sent me some messages she'd received from mutual acquaintances, as well as screenshots of a social media post Jerry's son had made that alluded to his drug use. It was enough to confirm that everything she said was true. Armed with this information, I decided to confront Kelly directly. I called her and told her to meet me at a local coffee shop. When she arrived, she looked smug, like she thought I was about to cave in. Instead, I laid everything out. I told her I knew about Jerry's son's behavior, the drugs, the trouble at school, all of it. Her face went pale. She tried to deny it at first, but when I showed her the screenshots, she went quiet. Then I said, "You've spent the past few months harassing me, threatening me, and dragging our son's memory through the mud, all so you could clean up someone else's mess. Do you even hear yourself?" She started crying, but I didn't let her guilt trip me this time. I told her that if she or Jerry ever contacted me again about the college fund, I would go public with everything I knew. I would expose their lies, their manipulation, and their attempts to exploit Ryan's memory. That was the first time I'd ever seen Kelly truly speechless. She left without saying another word. After that confrontation, things finally started to settle down. I haven't heard from Kelly, Jerry, or their lawyers since, and I'm hoping it stays that way. With the drama behind me, I decided to move forward with something that's been on my mind ever since I read your comments, creating a scholarship in Ryan's name. I contacted a local nonprofit that specializes in educational grants, and they helped me set up the Ryan Memorial Scholarship. It's designed to help underprivileged students in our community pursue higher education. Kids who remind me of Ryan in their drive, intelligence, and determination. When the scholarship was announced, I received so many messages from people in the community thanking me for honoring Ryan's legacy in such a meaningful way. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. Looking back, this whole ordeal has been a roller coaster of emotions: grief, anger, betrayal, and finally, a sense of closure. Losing Ryan is something I'll never fully recover from, but I've realized that I can still honor his memory by doing good in the world. As for Kelly, I don't know if she'll ever truly understand the hurt she caused. I hope for her sake that she takes a long, hard look at herself and figures out how to be a better person. But that's not my responsibility anymore. To everyone who supported me throughout this journey, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your advice and encouragement gave me the strength to stand my ground and do what was right. This chapter of my life is closed now, and I'm ready to move forward. TLDR, Kelly tried to push harder, but I confronted her with the truth about Jerry's son and threatened to expose everything. I've now set up a scholarship in Ryan's name, and I finally feel at